even though they wanted to conquer the world, and in many cases they did conquer large parts of the world, they were not able to conquer themselves. And that's the point. The greatest battle is not the external battle, however difficult or challenging these battles may be, and however extraordinary these accomplishments may be, but they're not half as difficult or half as necessary and important or significant and beneficial as the inner conquest. The conquest of the mind, the conquest of the senses. When we conquer our inner self, when we subdue our baser and lower natures, then our higher nature comes to the surface. That higher nature is characterized by all these divine qualities that I mentioned earlier, like love and compassion and so on. Wouldn't we like a world where these qualities prevail, where these are predominant, and people exhibit these qualities? And today what we see is the opposite. A world that is dominated by the baser instincts and natures of people. Therefore, we have all the opposite qualities: hatred, greed, pride, anger, ego, prevalent everywhere. So if we want a world where people love each other, trust each other, where they live happily together in a spirit of brotherhood and sisterhood, where there is a spirit of sharing and giving and caring and understanding, and where ultimately we achieve a higher purpose in life. Till such time as we achieve that inner conquest, the world is not going to be a happy place. If we want to make the world a happy place, we have to make ourselves happy first and foremost. Unless the individual is happy, how can the world be happy? And because we've got the wrong paradigm, we've got the wrong formula. We think that happiness comes from the body and the things connected to this body in this world. So therefore the greatest of conquerors might have got some feeling of intoxication by being up there, conquering the world, so to speak. But eventually, there is no conqueror in history, however great he or she may have been, who did not eventually bite the dust. Eventually, all the great conquerors of the world were conquered by time, they were conquered by death. Nobody is a conqueror forever. Even Alexander began his conquest when he was only 22. He continued on his rampage for 11 years until he reached India, and his soldiers who were weary, they just persuaded him, so we can't go on anymore, let's go back. They were homesick. And eventually he headed back towards Greece, and then somewhere near Persia it is said that he died because of some illness. Gone. Great conquerors blazed trails all over the world, and then one fine day finished. Everything's over, bitten the dust. What is the value of such a conquest? What is the use of such a conquest? How has it benefited anybody, even the person who's a conqueror, except that it just maybe gave a sense of ego, some feeling of some feel-good factor for the ego, that's all. So in this world, people achieve things which are essentially without any meaning or substance, and will lose the real essence of life. I spent a lot of time in the holy place of Vrindavan, the place of Lord Krishna. And for those of you who have visited Vrindavan, you will know that among other things, it's also famous for its monkeys. There's a lot of monkeys that are all over the place. And you see them everywhere. And one time I remember in our temple, I was standing and I noticed this one monkey. He was scrambling up to the top of the temple. It was quite a long climb. But he scampered up non-stop. It seemed like he was in a tearing hurry, as if there was some real urgency that he was following. And he went all the way up to the top of the temple dome. And then he looked here and there as if he had conquered the dome. And then he came rushing back. And I was thinking, really, this is what humanity has been doing. The monkeys are no different from us humans. Or rather, should I say the opposite, that humans are no different from the monkeys. Just as this monkey was going up, he had this demeanor that he was doing something really significant. He was going for something important, something really great, something valuable, and he was rushing up. And when he went there, he looked around in a flourish, in a mood of conquest, that I've made it, I've conquered the top of this building. And then he came down. And that was it. What did he accomplish? Similarly, the great conquerors of the world, they conquer different lands, slaughter people, they are adored by a few people, they get a crown on their head, and then what? It's all over. Finished. So what is the purpose really of all this conquest? And where is it leading us? And because everyone wants to be a conqueror, everyone wants to be an enjoyer, a proprietor, a lord, a master, so there's conflict. Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, he used to say that if you throw many pebbles at the same time into a pond that has stagnant water, then each of these pebbles will generate outwardly moving ripples or waves, which will collide with each other. But if you throw only one stone, or if you throw several stones at exactly the same point, then the ripples will be reinforced, and they will not collide, and they will grow strongly together. So similarly, when we all have our own egos in the center, I want to be the conqueror of the world. It's my ego versus your ego versus somebody else's ego and the other person's ego. And all these egos are like these ripples and waves that expand outwards. And then we clash. Somebody wins, somebody loses. And usually both lose. Eventually everybody loses. But that's the way of the world. Death comes to devour everything. Time is the ultimate conqueror of this world. Who can defeat time? So then we fight with each other. We have arguments with each other. So many differences that are caused in the community of human beings because of this principle that we have our self-interest at stake. However, if we have one common center, and Srila Prabhupada says that's Krishna, right here. If we have Krishna in the center, it's like throwing one pebble or many pebbles at exactly the same place. To the degree our pebbles are thrown exactly the same point in the water, the waves will reinforce each other and not clash. To the degree the pebbles are thrown at different points, there will be some clash. Some unison, but some clash. Similarly, to the degree we all develop or want to develop a love for Krishna, to that degree we will all be able to love each other. We will all be able to live harmoniously together in a spirit of peace, friendship and joy. But even if we are a little way off the mark in keeping Krishna firmly in the center of our life, to that degree we will have conflict. And conflict really is the number one problem in the world today. It may take its shape and it may appear in different shapes and forms, but essentially that's it. So the idea of keeping Krishna in the center is basically an indication that we have to conquer the inner enemies that we have with Krishna's help. By pursuing a path of love for Krishna, which is called Bhakti, or Bhakti Yoga, we actually petition the mercy of Krishna, by which we are able to conquer the enemies in the heart. In Sanskrit, it's called Shad Ripu, which means the 6 enemies. And we have 6 enemies residing within the heart. And even the greatest of conquerors, who may have conquered the whole world, were unable to conquer these 6 enemies residing within the heart. Lust, greed, anger, envy, pride, illusion. These are the 6 great enemies. And of course, we all know numerous examples of catastrophes that have happened in history, and also in our day-to-day life. We observe that in our world today. Catastrophes that have happened because of lust, greed, anger, envy, pride, and illusion. All the problems in the world come about because of these 6 things, individually and collectively. So if we want peace, we want happiness, we want joy, love, true love, then we have to be able to conquer these 6 enemies. These 6 enemies can be conquered by some weapons, just as to conquer our enemies in an external battlefield. We also need weapons, we need armies, we need strategies, and we need so many things to win a war. So also to win this battle, the toughest battle of our lives, we need help, we need knowledge, we need armory, we need fellow soldiers, we need a clear understanding of who the enemies are. The worst thing, the most difficult thing for armies and police forces of the world is when you don't know who your enemies are. Where are they hiding? When are they going to attack next? Who are these people? That's the most difficult thing. So the challenge for us in life is to first of all identify the enemies. The enemies are not the person next door, not the person who believes differently from us, not the one who has a religion different from mine, who speaks a language different from mine, who belongs to a country different from mine, who has a different ethnicity than mine. That's not the real enemy. People outside are not our real enemies. We are our worst enemies. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the mind can be our greatest friend or it can be our greatest enemy. When is the mind our greatest friend? When we conquer it. When is the mind our greatest enemy? When we don't conquer it. When we are conquered by the whims of the mind. I was narrating this little example in a lecture in Melbourne the other day. There was this lady in India who came to me with her 11-year-old son. And she had a complaint. She said, "Could you please explain to my boy that he must be a little obedient? He's really wild. He doesn't listen to me. He just creates havoc at home, doesn't do anything I ask him to do, and he breaks things in the house. He does whatever he likes." So then I was looking at this boy. He seemed such a nice, sweet little boy. Who would believe? But I believed the mother. So then I asked the boy, I smiled and asked him, "So you don't want to obey your mother?" He said, "No." I said, "Really? So why?" He said, "I don't follow anyone." I said, "Really?" Well, I was thinking to myself, so much ego. 11 years old, just imagine. At 11 years, so much ego. What's he going to be like when he becomes a grown-up man? Like Attila the Hun or something like that. I said, "Okay, look, do you do what your mind says? Do you follow what your mind says?" You were young, he didn't understand what I was saying. I said, "Well, when your mind says I want to eat, you eat?" He said, "Yes." When your mind says you want to sleep, you sleep? He said, "Yes." When your mind says don't follow mommy, you don't follow mommy? He said, "Yes." So in other words, whatever your mind says you do, he knew he was getting trapped now. He was thinking, I said yes. I gave him the answer, I said yes. So basically, you're obeying and following your mind. So if you're following and obeying your mind, why not obey and follow mommy? What is the problem? At least mommy loves you, she cares for you, she wants the best for you, and she's reliable, she's not going away at any time. But your mind is very unreliable. It says one thing now, it says another thing later. It says exactly the opposite later. It's very fickle, very restless. He nodded his head. I don't know how much went into his understanding, how much penetrated, but we tried. I haven't met the lady afterwards to see if the discussion had any benefit. But at least the boy was thinking a little bit. And that's exactly our situation as well. Even at a university gathering in Melbourne, we had a lot of international students gathered at the university. And one of the young men there was saying, I don't want to follow the Bhagavad Gita. So I said, why? He said, I don't want to follow any book. I just want to do what I want. My heart has to tell me, I have to feel convinced from inside, and then I have to move ahead towards spirituality. I asked him, what do you do? He said, I study nursing. So I said, well, do you have a textbook in nursing? Do you have a teacher? Do you have protocols? Do you have systems? It's not that you go and poke an injection anywhere in a patient. It's not that you just pull out blood by poking a needle anywhere you like. Right? There's protocols, there's knowledge, there's things you have to learn. There's a book. There's a textbook of nursing. So if there's a textbook for nursing, there's a teacher for nursing, why not just spiritual knowledge? So the discussion went on like that. Then I narrated the same instance to him about this 11-year-old boy. So I said, why do you trust your mind more than a holy book? Why is your own mind necessarily more reliable and more authentic as a source of guidance for you than a holy book that is time-tested, that has been followed by millions over the ages, and that contains such sublime knowledge? Why is your mind better than this book? So he said, yeah, actually you have to think about that. So I think he was quite intellectually honest because he was a genuine seeker. So he thought, he said yes, and let me think about it. So therefore you see where we have a mind which plays tricks with us, which wants to do whatever it likes basically. But that's the cause of our trouble. Unless we control the mind, unless we control the senses, unless we channelize the energies, our mental energies, intellectual energies, sensual energies, physical energies, and our abilities towards something elevating to the soul, purifying for the consciousness, till that time our mind and senses and intelligence are going to give us trouble. And herein lies the real crux of the matter, that we have to eventually conquer the mind and these 6 enemies by the process of devotional service or bhakti yoga. Actually, each of these 6 enemies is a topic in itself, and enough for one lecture in itself, or several lectures for each of these. You can talk about lust, you can talk about greed and anger and envy, pride, ego, you can talk about it. But today, of course, we don't have so much time to elaborate on each of these things, so I'm only taking a general perspective on this. So by accepting the practice of Bhakti Yoga, eventually, and especially by the chanting of the holy names of Krishna, gradually we find these enemies getting weaker and weaker. Because the arrows unleashed by the bow of the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna Mahamantra, actually kills and injures these enemies till they get weaker and weaker. It takes a while before they completely die. But when they do die, then we have the onset in the heart of something phenomenally sublime, something delicious, pure love for Krishna. It's a feeling that only one who's experienced can understand. It cannot be explained in words, although the scriptures do explain them very, very elaborately. But nevertheless, we can't actually have a deep understanding of these things unless we experience it. And when we start chanting the holy names, we actually get some sort of a glimpse. Perhaps a very brief glimpse, but a glimpse nevertheless. A little taste of what's to come. And if we pursue this path, then step by step we will actually experience it. We will experience our baser nature getting conquered by the higher nature. In the scriptures, in the Vedic scriptures, it's explained that in the early ages, in the previous ages, and the Vedic scriptures talk about history from a time far, far before what modern history identifies. And there were times when there were people also from other planets who would visit and so on. There's a whole lot of discussions on these scriptures. And the scriptures say that there are two classes of people in this world, and there always have been and there will be. One are those who are devotees of God, who are pure in heart, who are godly, so to speak, and the other who are ungodly, demoniac, who always work with a sense of hatred, ego, and pride, and lust, and greed, and so on. So those who are driven by the divine qualities are godly people. Those who are driven by these other qualities, the baser qualities, are ungodly by nature. So in the earlier ages you had the divine and the demoniac, so to speak, living on different planets altogether. As time passed, they lived on the same planet, but in different countries. Then you had them living in the same country, but in different cities. And in this age, which is called Kali Yuga, Kali comes from the word Kalaha, which means quarrel. So this is the age of quarrel, where people quarrel for small reasons and sometimes for no reason. Kali Yuga means this much of a reason and this much of a quarrel. That's Kali Yuga. So in Kali Yuga, the godly and the ungodly reside within us. That's the battle going on inside, the war. Lust, anger, greed, envy, pride. That's there. Each rearing their heads and say, I'm here, I'm here. Don't forget me. Don't forget to fulfill my desires. I want this, I want. And then we also have the godly person within us. Says, no, don't do that. That's not good. That's not right. Come on, forgive that person. It's all right. No, why should I forgive them? Then the ungodly one comes up in the heart and says, why should I forgive them? And then the godly person in the heart says, you should. Just be a good human being. Why should you bear hatred towards that person? So there's this battle going on. Our lower and higher natures are battling it out in the heart. Sounds familiar? Or do I sound like someone from Mars? Sounds something you can relate to? Happens all the time? So that's the battle going on within. So what do? You heard this saying, an army moves on its stomach. Yeah? You heard the phrase. So also this army, you have to feed the right army and starve the other army. You have to feed the good army, the godly army that's inside, and you have to starve the other army. That's the lust, greed, anger, envy, and so on and so forth. And how do you do that? Don't give them the food, don't give them the opportunity. And the best way to do that really is to associate with godly-minded people. Like we're all sitting in this room, we've all come here for nourishing the godly element within us. None of us has come here to nourish the ungodly element. Otherwise we would be somewhere else, not here. Plenty of places we could have been. So we've all been here because we all want to nurture and nourish that godly person, that army within us. So first and foremost, we need the company of godly-minded people. Even if we are beginners, doesn't matter. Or we may be very elevated. Of course, the more elevated our association is in spiritual life, the better it is for us. But nevertheless, at least as a principle, we need people who can come together on this common platform. That's called A. You know, A, B, C, D of everything. A stands for association. Company. A person is known by the company he or she keeps. So if you keep the company of godly-minded people who have similar struggles as you do, for other people it's not a struggle because they've given up anyway. They only want to nurture certain ungodly sides. Or maybe they think it's not possible. They're good people, but they're not aware. So when we come to the company of spiritually minded people, then we feel some encouragement. We feel hope. We don't feel lonely anymore. I'm not alone in this Herculean struggle. I have others with me in this struggle. So it's helpful. We learn so many things. We get guidance. The next thing we need is B. That's Bhagavad Gita, that's book. We need the book of knowledge. We need a war strategy book. We need a manual that will tell us what we should do and what we shouldn't be doing. We need a lifestyle manual that tells us how to live and how to not live. What comes after B? C. Chanting. Chanting the names of Krishna. That's the best remedy. We chant Hare Krishna and these demons go far away. They're dead, they're destroyed, they're starved, and they're actually attacked by the weapon of the holy name. And Mr. Lust and Mr. Greed and Mr. Pride, Mr. Envy, they run away. And then there's D, diet. Follow, take Krishna Prasadam. Take pure vegetarian foods that has been offered with love to Krishna. And then if you do A, B, C, and D, then you get E, which is ecstasy. Then you get real enjoyment. And that's life, real life. That's the real thing. So the battle that we are speaking about, to conquer the inner battlefield, is not a battle of bloodshed and weapons and killing, slaughter, so on. But it's actually a happy process. The Bhagavad Gita says that this Krishna consciousness process is a very happy process. None of you look unhappy here. Sure. You look happy because simply by being in this company, you just feel a certain elevation. You feel something sublime. So the process is very happy, whereas the process of conquering the world, the external world, in whatever way, militarily, economically, and so on and so forth, is full of its inebrities, full of negativities. Whereas here, there's just positive energy flowing. And another interesting thing I want to tell you about this conquest is that when you develop love for Krishna, you actually conquer God. Just imagine, Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan and Attila the Hun and Napoleon conquered just a few million square miles of territory, and then they were conquered by time. But here, you can conquer God. Of course, a lover of God doesn't start loving God with that calculation or with that intention. We don't do Bhakti Yoga because we want to conquer God. But the point is that love is so powerful, even ordinary mundane love is so powerful, people do all sorts of things. Sometimes mind-boggling things driven by the so-called love of this world. how much more powerful is divine love, transcendental love for Krishna. And when we are full of that love, Krishna is attracted by that love. Krishna is not attracted by anything material. He is not attracted by our material bodily beauty. He is not attracted by our wealth, by intelligence, by our abilities, or by any other material feature that we may exhibit in this world. He is only attracted by our devotional qualities like humility, mercy, and especially by our pure devotion for Him. By that love, He becomes conquered. That's the statement of the famous text, Srimad Bhagavatam. That one who becomes a lover of Krishna becomes a conqueror of Krishna, because Krishna becomes so obliged by that love. Julius Caesar may have been the biggest conqueror of the world, or one of the biggest conquerors, but when he came home, he was conquered, because Cleopatra had him conquered. Yes? So one may be, whoever one may be in the world, but there are other conquerors who are there to conquer us in different ways. So when we love Krishna, Krishna becomes so obliged by that love, he becomes conquered. This is a relationship of love between Krishna and his pure devotees. A relationship of reciprocal love. And the acme, or the perfection, the highest exhibition of this reciprocal love on the highest platform can be seen in the holy land of Vrindavan when Krishna appeared. Generally, the conception of God in this world is of a God who is fearful, awesome, who is to be feared, who is to be merely obeyed. But the Krishna conscious conception or understanding of God is something that is sublime. God is a person not just to be obeyed and feared. That's necessary in the early stages of spirituality. But essentially it's meant for developing love. So in Vrindavan, the concept of God is one of a cowherd boy who doesn't evoke fear and grandeur and awe and reverence in the minds of the devotees, but he invokes such a simple, intimate, sublime love that it is unparalleled in any theology. In Vrindavan, the devotees don't know that Krishna is God. And even sometimes when they know it, they don't care that Krishna is God. Krishna's friends, the cowherd boys, they climb on his shoulder. They're little boys. They have fun and games like other boys and girls too. And they climbed on his shoulder, they stole his meals, they would tease him like they would tease other children. They didn't consider he's God. And Krishna loved these little pastimes that went on there. His mother and father, Nanda and Yashoda, they didn't think Krishna is God. They would sometimes scold Krishna, just as any parent would sometimes scold or reprimand a child. They didn't think, oh, this is God, how can I scold God? And if Krishna were to think or to understand that the devotees were thinking of him as God, he would say, oh, I spoiled all the fun. Because Krishna in Vrindavan doesn't like to be God. In Vrindavan, he just likes to love his devotees in this very simple and sublime way. So similarly, the gopis of Vrindavan, they love Krishna as the lover. They love God in the mode of the lover and the beloved. That's true love. It's not the love of this world. That is the ultimate conquest. Such an exalted state of affairs, such a high state of consciousness. That's where we are meant to be. That's our ultimate aspiration in life. So the real battle to fight is not merely the battle against the external forces, that we may perceive to be threats and our enemies. Of course, for the stage of survival, we may have to do that to some whatever degree, but ultimately we have to fight the internal battle. Fight our lower natures, and by strengthening our higher nature, arouse the latent and dormant devotion within our hearts for Krishna. Eventually develop pure love for Krishna. And then we go back to Krishna's kingdom, to Krishna's abode. Never to come back again to this world, which Lord Krishna declares in the Bhagavad Gita as being a world of misery, where there's constantly birth, death, old age and disease, where we have this material body which is a cause of pain. But in Krishna's kingdom, it's only fun and joy, bliss, eternal life, no death, no birth, no old age, no disease, no taxes. It's just sheer fun. Would you like to be there? It's a good place. That's the goal of our life. That's the ultimate benefit of attaining victory in the inner battle. Thank you very much. People like us also have to fight another battle, the urge to speak on and on and on. So I have to conquer that demon within, say, go on, no, stop. So we'll leave the floor open for questions or comments. Please feel free to speak if you have any doubts or any comments. Yes?
All the topics that you talk about, like with the lust and envy, anger, they're all things that are so common for us. We've heard before that it's not anything strange. And then when you come to the solution of finding, we've all heard of the concept of God, but growing up in Australia, you don't hear anything about Krishna necessarily until you kind of get to your 30s, and all of a sudden you hear Krishna is God. And I'm just wondering how you tackle that. For so many people, it's just such a far out concept. That God is blue and He's Krishna. How do we get through that, and trying to explain to other people as well, who, when you tell them that Krishna is God, and they've never even heard of Krishna.
Yeah, it's an important question. Well, in countries like Australia or many other parts of the world, the idea that Krishna is God is quite a far out idea. Blue-colored God of all things. And you can imagine when Prabhupada went to America in the 60s and he told people that Krishna was a cowboy as well. He's a cowbird boy, so he's not just blue in color, but he's a cowboy. Of course, he's not the kind of cowboy that they imagine in America, shooting from the hip. But he was another kind of cowboy. So it definitely is, by everyday, normal conceptions of the world, something quite far out, as you say. Strange. But our experience of this world is limited by our own experience. And transcendence is something that comes from another platform. So we have no way of knowing God unless God reveals Himself to us. So Krishna means all attractive, and He's very keen that we should get to know Him. So He makes available knowledge about Himself to us through various means, like the scriptures, like Srimad Bhagavatam, like the devotees, like the holy name, and so on. So even though the idea may indeed appear to be far out, but once you think about it, it's actually quite a wonderful idea. It's so much more better than a God who is portrayed to be an old man with a wide flowing beard and bent all over because he's been holding up the universe for such a long time. And he's old because He's the oldest person in the universe. But God is not old. God is ever young. He's always like this. He's Krishna. He's ever youthful. If God also grows old eventually, then what's the difference between Him and us? So the idea of God, Krishna as God, is undoubtedly very unusual for people who are not born and raised in this culture.